to Andrea Sawatzky. She worked for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency before working with Health Canada's Pest Management Regulatory Agency as a pesticide compliance and enforcement officer in Calgary for the past 20 plus years. She hopes you enjoy this conversation about the risks of pesticides, the implications of aging, and how these risks are communicated.
As Sean mentioned, I'm with Health Canada. My name is Andrea Sawatzky, and I've been doing my job for a long, long time. So I'm going to kind of move away from what, like Ron was talking about the labels and the complexity around labels, which, yes, I'm one of those inspectors that you might be seeing. We work with the CFIA, but we're not with the CFIA. And then Jonathan went and talked about the environment. So I'm going to focus more on people. So more about yourself and people that you know and people around you. So this is, I'm just trying to shrink all this a bit. Hang on a sec here. And just 2 minutes, just 2 seconds here. I can see all you, but I can't see my screen. Oops, you can see that as I move on. Okay, never mind that. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to try and get it done so that you have time for lunch, because I tend to get distracted and sidetracked really easily. So what I'm going to talk about here is, this is not moving forward. Give me a sec here. Always technical difficulties when you start a presentation. Oh, okay, I'll do it this way. All right. So what I'm going to talk about, basically broken my presentation down to 3 sections. I'm going to talk about risk. What is risk? And we heard a bit about that from, like Jonathan talked about risk. So I'll talk again about risk. This is not so much for the environment, but more so for you as an applicator, your bystanders, your clients, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll talk about this risk and how it affects people as they get older and how the risks increase as you get older. And then how do you communicate these risks to other people? Because everyone knows, pesticides when they're in the news are never there in the news in a positive way. So how do you communicate to the people around you that may not know as much as you do about pesticides? Okay, so those are my three main components of this whole presentation. So I'll start with, okay, so health and the environment. So basically, you think about yourself and your health, right? Your kids' health, your parents' health, all these different healths, right? It all comes down to how we live, where we live. It's right. It's how you breathe, what you're breathing, the water you're drinking, and the food you're eating. So when you look at pesticides have the ability to affect all of that. And if any of that's affected in a negative way, then human health is compromised, right? So that happens to everyone. So now, excuse me. So we look at that. Okay, so now think about that, and then it's okay. Let's take safety versus risk. So safety is basically freedom from danger. So we do things because we believe we will stay safe. When I drive to town to get groceries, I believe when I drive to town, I will be coming home from town in the same state I left, but with groceries. I don't expect myself not to come back. So I expect myself to stay safe. The risk is different. But in my mind, I'll be safe. I'll be right back. So see you in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I'll be back. So when you look at safety, right, it's either it's safe or it's not. And if it's not safe, then you take all the precautions that you need to. So if it's really blizzarding outside, well, maybe I won't get groceries today. Maybe my precaution is I'm going to stay home. I am not going to go driving, right? And the thing about safe is for everyone. So if you're using a pesticide, it's you, the applicator. You have to stay safe. Your bystanders need to stay safe. And it depends what you're spraying, right? If someone's going to eat it or drink the area that you're spraying, they have to stay safe the whole time. And safety is rather easy to explain. So the thing about safety, though, is like if you think you're safe, like say you're wearing a respirator, you believe you're wearing a respirator, you are now protected from fumes from the chemical that you're spraying because it says wear a respirator on the label, and that's what you're doing. So I'm safe. if you didn't check it properly, it might not be as airtight as possible as you think it might be. So if there's a leak into it and you don't know it, right? If you're not safe, you'll breathe that in. So, but if you think you're safe, you may not act as safely around that pesticide. So you might lose your vigilance. If you didn't have a respirator and there's no respirator on the label, you'll make sure you know about the wind factor. Like you're going to spray to make sure you're all good. With a respirator, you may not be as careful. So if you're not as vigilant, you might increase your risk. So they look at, okay, what is risk? Okay, risk can either be, well, think about risk. It's a possibility that something bad can happen, right? So that is the risk. So anything you do, everything you do, it's either less risky or it's more risky, right? And that's what you have to weigh. So you look at the precautions, any precautions like PPE, personal protective equipment, for example, that is a precaution that you use to reduce your risk to exposure. And then with this presentation, we're talking about as you age, so risks are higher for certain people. We have people that, when we look at how a pesticide is used, you heard the vulnerable population. The vulnerable population, they're the elderly, they're the babies, they're the young, they're those that are, that are sick. They're all vulnerable, more so than the average healthy Canadian, right? So risk is higher for certain people, and it's a lot harder to explain. It's also a lot harder to put this into a label. So I'm looking at safe, because safe, it's a subjective term, right? It is based on personal opinions and your feelings rather than on facts. And it is not a one size fits all. So it can imply many things. It can imply that, it's your health and well-being. How about your frame of mind or your financial security, quality of life, predictability, control, involvement, or familiarity? So all of this can be part of whether you think you are safe or not. So being as safe is a subjective term. How do you put that into a label? So how do you put that so that you're using a pesticide? Is it safe to use, right? So then you say, okay, well, so the scientists and the people in Ottawa, the PMRA type, we're the Health Canada type of the regions, but PMRA in Ottawa says, okay, let's put this in like more of a formula, like in an equation. So risk is how toxic the chemical is multiplied by the probability that you'll be exposed to it. If we look at exposure, there's 3 ways to get exposed to a pesticide, right? You can touch it, you can breathe it in, or you can eat it. So when you think about this is okay, like, well, if I'm wearing a respirator, I'm not going to breathe it in. Great. Now that's awesome for you as an applicator. But if you're spraying something, what about the bystander? What about someone who lives down the road, right? You talk about ingesting, okay, so great, you're not going to eat it, but it's now could be on a crop that someone may eat down the road. So how long is it going to stay on the crop before you eat it? So you look at all these ways that product can get into or you can be exposed to a product. So let's make this a little bit more, in depth here. So here's a risk equation again, right? That's how toxic the product is versus the probability of exposure. So let's look at the toxicity of the product. So if the active ingredient, it could be either highly toxic, moderately toxic, or low toxic. You'll know that if you look at the label. It could have long-term effects, chronic effects, or it could be short, or it could be more short-term and acute. And then it's not just the active ingredient that does the work in the chemical, but what about the inerts that makes up the product? It's not just active and water. It could be other things in there that could also be effective or could be affecting, the human health. And then it talk about the concentration of the product. So that's what defines the toxicity of an active ingredient or a product. And what the PMRA does is, okay, we'll put these labels out, and so that you as an applicator know, we're going to label them. So it's going to be either cautious, right? It's a warning, danger. So if you see these on the front panel of the label, if it says danger, okay, take a close look at the PPEs, take a close look at buffer zones, take a close look at a lot of different things. So this is a product that is a little bit more dangerous versus caution, right? So the PMRA is giving you, or the label is giving you an example of what the risk could be if you use this product. And all this is found through the mode of action of the chemical. So when the scientists say, okay, how toxic is this product? They're looking at the mode of action of the chemical, right? They even talk to poison control. They get calls about poison, like how did it affect people? They talk to them. Medical surveillances. They look at the toxicology literature. So they look at everything to see how do we classify, how toxic is this product we're using? So again, we talk about the toxicity of the chemical. Now let's talk about the probability of exposure. So this is the second half of the equation. So if you look at this, right, it could be based on the formulation of the product, the person being exposed, or ways, and there's also ways to minimize your exposure. So if you look at this, okay, the formulation of the product, is the product you're using, is it a dust? Is it a liquid, right? Is it a solid bait, like a rodenticide? Are you fogging something? Is it an emulsifiable concentrate? Is it a wettable powder? Like, what is the formulation? The formulation of the product can kind of working towards how toxic the product is, like, and how much PPE you guys basically need to use, right? So then the person's being exposed. I mentioned this earlier, right? The sensitive population, the young, maybe the women that are pregnant, that are nursing, the elderly, even pets, right? Who's being exposed? And how does exposure affect them? And then they look at ways to minimize your exposure. So you discuss where the product is being applied and how do you keep the exposure low, right? Don't spray in winds over 16 kilometers an hour, for example, right? Because then there's less chance of drifting. Do not apply next to human habitation, next to schools, right? So there's reason, like, don't apply to schools because. So poll number one, Sean, if you don't mind.
Should be live now.
Sean, I can't see the answer, so if you let me know what the common answer is.
For sure, yeah. The answers are just coming in now, so I'll give it
Okay,
a couple seconds, about a minute, and then I'll let you know what people are saying.
perfect.
All right. About 90% of participants have responded, and 84% of them said A and C.
Perfect, because how toxic the product is and the chance of exposure, yes, that talks about the likelihood of experiencing a health effect. The value, not really. That just means the value would be like the cost of the product, right? That doesn't matter. It might do well against the insects or the weeds you're spraying, but again, that's got no effect on the person. So A and C is 100% correct. And I'm glad most of you got that. That means you're all paying attention and listening. That's awesome. So moving on to, hang on a sec here. Yeah, here we go. So exposure. So let's take a close look at exposure. Okay, so the fact is that it is possible for people to become exposed to any substance in the environment. That is a fact, right? Everyone knows that. Now, the question you ask yourself, what is the risk that exposure will cause harm? So this is the question you can ask. This is definitely the question the PMRA asks. It's like, hey, what is the risk that exposure will cause harm? And this is called the risk assessment. So they're assessing the risk. So they say there's a question, the response to the question, that would be the managing of the risk, the management. So what can be done about it, right? So the harm that's done to human health is, like I mentioned before, is a function of the toxicity of the product and the degree of exposure. So I'm going to give you an example here. Let's take this. Like consider crossing an ocean. So you're going to go from Canada to Europe, and we're in Vancouver, we're jumping in a boat, and we're going across. So you can choose to be in an ocean liner. Let me just get this here. I can do this. You can choose, oops, hang on a sec, to be in an ocean liner or this little itty bitty rowboat here. Okay, so in this case here, the hazard, being drowning, is the same. Both boats are on water. Water is deep. You can drown, right? But the risk is a lot less in an ocean liner because the probability of exposure to the water compared to this rowboat is minimal, right? So the risks are the same, or sorry, the hazard's the same, but the risk is different. So that's what they're looking at. It's like, okay, what is your exposure and what is your risk? Like, what's risk of exposure and how do we change it, right? So back to our scenario here, let's take a look at a bit of a diagram. So the diagram here shows you have risk. Okay, so the risk is the water. The hazard, drowning. If you have adverse health effect for drowning, is death. Do not want that. So this is what we do not want to have. So it's okay, what is the probability? What's the likelihood that you will be exposed to it? So if you choose to cross the ocean, well, as my spidey senses say, I want to survive, I think I would like this bigger boat better, right? Because I'm less susceptible to drowning in a big boat than I am in a small boat, right? So that's basically what risk is. So if you look at that, it's like the hazard and the probability of being exposed to it. So that's just, yeah. Anyways, so I found this little quote. This is from Aaron Wodolski. He's an American political scientist. He worked with risk management. He came up with this saying that says, there's no safety without risk. It's like saying there's no good without evil, right? They just don't exist without each other. So recognizing that, and we all know, right, that there is no such thing as a completely risk-free environment. It is not possible. The government knows that, you know that, everyone knows that, but we need to still, as a government, that's where the label comes in. We need to figure out what's the process you need to make the level of risk acceptable to both the environment, which is what Jonathan talked about, and the public health. So they built up this little framework. And what they look at is, okay, first you all identify what is the hazard. Then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to characterize and quantify that risk if someone should get exposed to it. And then you can develop options for controlling that risk. And then you're going to implement the control measure. So if it is certain PPE, then it's expected that you will now implement the control measure, which is to wear the PPE. And then after all this is said and done, once it's done and used for a while, then we need to evaluate. This is doing what we thought it would do. It sounds good on paper. Will that be true in real life? So this person up here, Paracelsus, 400 years ago, everyone knows it's only the dose that makes the poison. He came up with that 400 years ago. So he goes, everything is a poison. There's nothing without a poison quality. Water, you need to have 8 cups of water a day to keep yourself healthy, but too much water, you can drown. So water is good, but it can also be bad depending on how much there is. So, right, the truth. Overexposure to any substance can threaten health. And we know that if you get exposed to any pesticide, chances are you're going to threaten your health in some way or another. If it's even an inert kind of dust, you breathe it into your lungs, right? You still might have ill health effects from that. So because the level of harm depends on the level of exposure, it's a continuing challenge to determine through risk assessment the level of exposure to particular substances. So again, we talk about the food, the water, the air. So how do we minimize the amount of pesticide that goes into the food, into the water, into the air to keep you safe? It's like a risk cup. Like here you get a cup. If it overflows, you're not safe. If it stays within the cup, you're all good. So then with those, once they find what the risks are, then they say, okay, we'll manage the risks. And then here's talking government-wise, talking about Health Canada. There's like a bunch there's a bunch of options we have, right? You can do minimal intervention, which is enhancing public awareness. If you think about, cigarettes, like smoking. You look at the cigarette packaging, they have all these information on, they got diagrams on there. That's enhancing public awareness. And then we can go to more extreme, and we can do we can do bans of certain products like we do with DDT. And you heard DDT in a previous presentation. So we can ban things or you can make public awareness. So there's different ways of trying to let people know what they need to do or how to minimize their risk. So now that's just a quick overshoot of what a risk is. So now we're gonna move on to the second part of the presentation. This is talking about aging, right? So what is aging? Aging is basically the process of growing old. As you get older, and we all know this because it happens to all of us, you can't get away from it, your biological functions will start to decline. Your ability to adapt to metabolic stresses will decline. And this whole process continues as you get older and older and older. So aging basically reflects all the changes that happen over a lifetime. So here you are, you start growing, you start developing, you reach maturity. It's like climbing a hill. Get to the top and you slide down to old age, right? So this happens, and if you are lucky enough to survive to old age, this will happen to all of us. So okay, that's fine. That's a good piece of information. But then let's talk about aging. So okay, this aging part. Aging begins once we reach adulthood. So remember, you're developing and growing until adulthood, and then you kind of reached your peak. Now, adulthood it's the period in your life when a person's reached full physical and intellectual maturity. And that's thought to start at about 20 years old. So about 20, you've hit adulthood. And then you move on to middle age, is about 40. And then at old age, around 60, you start doing the downward slide to old age. Well, that's where it starts. So if you look at the aging process, right, basically when you're physically speaking, early and middle adulthood, you will start seeing gradual declines in bodily functions, or not body functions, which will speed up as we start reaching old age. So it's thought that muscle mass, it will continue to grow and increase through until the mid-20s. And after that, it'll start slowly decreasing. So you see a lot of big muscle, bodybuilders, like really good muscling. It doesn't look the same when you're 20 as when you're 80, right? You can still bodybuild the same, but body does not look the same because your muscle mass will decrease. Now, then as you look at the picture before, the older people, like, young, you're kind of tall and straight, and eventually people tend to maybe start stooping a bit, right? That's because the skeletal mass, it increases in growth or increases until about age 30, and then it starts to decrease. And it starts with a central skeleton, which is your pelvic and your spine. So you can see people start hunching over a bit because it's getting hard to stay straight. And then last, it ends up with your peripheral skeleton, which is your fingers and toes. So it's just something that'll go. So keep this in mind, right? Muscle mass, skeletal mass, like it all starting to decrease as you get older. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can try and, there's things anyways, never mind. As far as pesticides go, right? You do the best you can. Now, when you look at the vulnerable populations, right, it's important to understand and recognize that people are not alike, right? Whether you might be exposed to a pesticide and your neighbor might be exposed to the pesticide, and your ability to detoxify, get it out of your system may be different. And that is something you won't know until it happens, and hope it never does. So when you look at, see, here's these hands here. So you get this little guy right here. Now, the reason that infants and children, and especially the very young, they're more susceptible, more vulnerable than adults is because their tissues and organs, they undergo rapid cellular development. So they're rapidly growing. So as their cellular structure changes, they become much more susceptible to environmental contaminants or hazards. When we hit adolescence here, that's another window of vulnerability. That's because at this stage too, you also have another, my son was growing so hard, and then suddenly at a certain age, he just shot up, right? That's an adolescent, you shoot up. So there's a rapid growth rate and there's a surge of hormones. And all this makes them more vulnerable as compared to a healthy adult. And then you have you get to the reproductive years, and this is where if you get exposed to pesticide, this could affect your fertility and the outcomes of your pregnancy. So you could have a stillbirth, you could low birth weight, preterm delivery, all that could be affected. So these are the four, I guess, types of vulnerable populations. And we're going to focus the rest of this part of this presentation on the senior years. This is as you get older, because we've done this, not all of us will do this, and we all hit here, hopefully. So let's talk about the senior years. It's over the past century, medical science has made it possible for people to live much longer, which is great. But longer life also means there's a greater exposure to the harmful effects of the environment. And because of that, seniors face particular health risks. it's not, because as you get older, like you have a longer time to build up the chemical hazards or environmental hazards in your system, but your organs are changing. Everything's changing, boy. So you're building it up, and then your system is changing. I'll talk about that in a little bit here too. So, this is what I say, they get particular health risks, right? And they have a declining margin of safety, right? Especially in our cardiorespiratory and immune systems. Like the cardiorespiratory, that's your heart and your lungs, right? And the immune system is like, be able to fight off diseases. So, and then as you get older, you might start getting health issues besides pesticides. So there could be pre-existing health conditions that might occur as you get older. So as you age, right, we are more likely to experience a variety of health problems and are more susceptible to hazards in the environment, even when you are relatively in good health. And that's kind of like a fact. Also, as you get older, your body starts building up a lifetime's worth of environmental contaminants, and these could stay in your system for up to decades. So it's building up inside, right? And like you can wash your hands, but you can't clean your insides. Like your insides are they have to get broken down, kind of like what Jonathan was saying. There's ways to break it down, but that's your body's working on. So this higher body burden of environmental contaminants and the senior sensitivities to additional risks increases their vulnerability to hazards in the environment. And one of the hazards would be, in this case, we're talking about pesticides. For that reason, Health Canada looks at their special considerations for elderly people. That's why we put them into the class of, the vulnerable population. So we need to, when we assess you're using pesticides, that has to be taken into consideration as well when we look at the risks of exposure to environmental contaminants. So now we're going to move on to poll number 2. Sean, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. It is up. What are the 3 methods of exposure to pesticides? And again, if you are unable to answer the poll on the platform, please feel free to submit your answer in chat.
And once you get most in, Sean, let me know what the answer, what the popular answer is.
About 80% of folks have submitted an answer. And as I went to speak, about 100% there all said B, dermal contact,
Right.
inhalation, ingestion.
Yep. I thought, okay, I can't trick these people. I tried to make it tricky, but nah, it's simple tricky. But yes, 100% right. So it's contact, it's touching, you breathe it in and you eat or drink, right? So yes, perfect. Thank you for that. And good answers, by the way. So moving on. Still on the aging thing. Okay, so the effects, as you age, the effects of the age, okay, like this is kind of a sensitive topic, so bear with me in this. The combination of age and disease-related risks are very evident. Like if you think about, like say last summer, the summer before, when you had the big forest fires up in northern Alberta and northern BC, and we got the really smoky air. This smoky air is really hard for elderly people. So if you live in a northern region, a small northern region, often they will evacuate the elderly to a place where there's less smoke, right? Because they can't handle their ability to their lung capacity decreases basically. So they can't take as much oxygen up as a healthy adult can. So with things like that, so then that's when if you wonder why, they evacuate the young, they evacuate the elderly, it's because their lung capacity is not the same, right? So when you think about that, it's like, why are they being evacuated? Okay, their lung capacity is not the same, they can't handle it. That goes the same thing. Like think about spraying a pesticide and it drifts, right? It's the same thing. They can't take it up as well. They can't eliminate it as well. So yeah. So then also now to go forward here, think about your skin. If you look at your hands, right, you can see your skin. So in order for any pesticide to affect you, remember you passed that quiz, right? It's absorbed into your body 3 ways. You can swallow it, you can breathe it, or you get it on your skin. And as we get older, the chance of absorbing pesticides into the body can be decreased or can be increased. And there's several reasons for that. One is you look at this picture diagram here, right? Look at the skin. This is the epidermis right here. Here's your skin. So as you get older, the outer layer of your skin becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. And because it becomes thinner, pesticides can penetrate or move through the skin. It absorbs much quicker, much easier than through in a younger person. So if two people are standing side by side and have contact with the same amount of pesticide, they touch the same surface and that same amount of contaminants on it, the younger person will get less pesticides crossing their epidermis than an older person because of, again, here, it's thinner and it's weaker and the penetration is much easier. So this is why an older person may absorb more pesticide compared to a younger person. Even the amount of the product is the same. Now, the thinner skin of an older adult is also more easily damaged when it comes in contact with a pesticide. This damaged skin, this is also things, damaged skin is slow to become red or irritated. So your skin, it's thinner. It also doesn't seem to have the same receptors on it. So they may not realize that they've got a chemical on. They don't feel it. They don't see it. It's not red. It's not irritated. They don't notice it. So the chemical may be on their system longer or on their skin longer than for a younger person, mostly because it takes long for the skin to react to the pesticide. So A, the pesticide can go through the skin quicker. B, the reaction time is slower, so it might be on the contact. Like if you touch something, oh, that's great, gross, and you wash it off quickly. If you don't notice it, it stays on longer. So it's another reason that the pesticide can be absorbed more through an older person than the skin of an older person than a younger person. And it kind of goes along with our nervous system. Our nervous system also changes as you get older. And the nervous system is how you notice, like if you feel something, your nervous system says, hey, I feel something pokey, I feel something hot, I feel something sharp. This is something acidic. I can feel it. It makes you pull away. So this sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of taste, all that sense tends to decrease as you get older. So because of this, you can respond slower. Like you may not smell the pesticide if you're older than a younger person would. So you don't vacate the premises as quick because you're not smelling it, right? So you don't smell as well, and your skin doesn't feel it as well. So those things kind of it's not like you're slower as an adult. You just don't, as an older adult, you just don't realize it. So these slow response times can make it difficult for an older adult to determine when they are being exposed to a pesticides. So those are the couple of reasons why side by side, two people, one could be 60 plus, one could be 30 under, right? They have the same exposure, but it's different for two different body types. So I'm gonna go through this next section because there's a lot of information in this next few slides. And as I go through them, I'm gonna ask a question. So think about this question in response to what's on the slide. So question number one here is, why is it harder for older adults to remove pesticides from their bodies? Okay, so stop and think about that. Why is it harder? So as we mentioned before about the smell, the sense of smell, sense of touch, and taste all decreases as you get older. So also the ability of the heart to move blood around the body declines as we age. And this reduced blood flow to the liver and to the kidneys. And by the way, the size of the liver and kidneys also decreases as we get older. So as this blood flow decreases, right, this is what cleans the system from all your pesticides. So if this filter is not able to do its job, then the contaminants will stay around much longer. So reduced blood flow and decrease in the liver and kidney size can work together to slow down the breakdown and removal of pesticides from the body, right? So you think about that, okay? So liver and kidneys, they shrink as you get older. The blood flow slows down, so your body's ability to remove pesticides has decreased. All right, so now question number two, think about this. Does aging affect how the body stores pesticides? Well, as you get older, this is another unfortunate effect of growing older. As you get older, you tend to gain body fat. and then you lose your lean muscles as you get old. So as you get old, you gain body fat and you lose lean muscle. Now the body can store pesticides in fat. And you heard that when Jonathan was talking about the whales. It can store fat. If it's stored in the fat, it's not being removed by the liver and kidney. So it's just being stored there until, of course, you need to eat, until you use up the fat and then it comes out. So pesticides that are stored in fat can build up in larger quantities in the bodies of older adults because they tend to have more fat and less lean muscle. And because of this, older adults may experience health problems from pesticides exposure, again, that may not cause problems for younger adults. The body also can store pesticides in blood and other body fluids. So, and if body fluids don't move around as quickly, again, it stays inside a lot longer. So that is, look at those two questions there. Now, look at the third question. Next page here. What effects could result from pesticide exposure in the elderly? So what are effects of this? Now, think about it as you get older, right? As you get older, as you even ever know someone that's older than they are, they're maybe more likely to have health problems. They can have health problems before the pesticide, they can contact the pesticide, or even after. So if they have health problems after the pesticide, they come into contact or be exposed to a pesticide, they will need more time to heal because, like I mentioned in the last slide, liver and kidney become less able to remove pesticides from the body as we age because they are smaller and they just don't work as well. Now, the pesticides that you come into contact with may also speed up the aging of the liver or the kidneys, which is not good, especially if they're injured during the exposure. So the pesticide itself could affect your livers and kidneys, which are already shrinking as you get older. So this is another reason why an older adult may not be able to remove pesticides as easily as a younger person. And we all know that the longer pesticide stays inside, the more likely it is to build up to levels that can cause injury. So a little bit of pesticide might not do much, but as it builds up, it's a cumulative effect. It's a long-term effect, right? The chronic effect. It could add up and cause more problems. Older adults also may have health problems, right? So if you look at health problems, if you have a health issue, the chances are now you're taking prescription medication. Now, when you're taking prescription medication, that's a drug, it's a chemical. Pesticide, it's a chemical. If you have a pesticide, if you come in contact with a pesticide and you now have contact with a drug, two different chemicals, how are they going to react when they're in your system? So that's you have to think about too. Okay, so prescription drugs and pesticides could react with each other once they're inside your body, right? So as you get older, people use more prescription medications than younger people. I know my in-laws, they have like that pill box. You got a whole week. You put a whole bunch for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So they know what they're taking, right? My kids don't have that same pill box because they don't take as much medication. So now you look at another thing here. Oopsie. Back up. There we go. So when you think about other effects, you got the pesticides, you got your pharmaceuticals, they all can add up to contaminants within your system. So what else? If you think, so basically, if you look at this, is like I have a hard time because I'm looking at my in-laws next door. I'm like, this affects them completely. Anyways, when you look at how this affects your like an older adult, right? They may take prescription drugs. They may be applying chemicals, right? They will come into contact with prescription medication. They may come into contact with a pesticide. But will this get broken down? And will it get broken down the same, or will it be differently? So the liver and the kidney, they can become less able to remove pesticides from the body if that person is also taking several types of prescription drugs, because your body is trying to utilize the drugs, it's got the chemicals, it's trying to break it all down. So it's almost like a chemical overload. And as the disease itself, an older person might be, they have like heart problems or kidney problems or some kind of age-related problems. This disease himself can also reduce the ability to remove pesticides from the body, which would increase your pesticide risk, right? So this is a lot in a few slides. So I'm going to just sum this up because that was a lot of information and I had a hard time getting it out because it's almost close and personal because my in-laws live right next door to me, so I see them on a daily basis, and they are plus 80. So to sum up the last couple of slides, the nervous system changes, such as diminished smell, taste, and touch sensations, lead to a reduced ability to detect and avoid chemicals. Secondly, more rapid absorption across the skin combined with a potential increase in the time of contact adds up to a larger dose. Thirdly, pre-existing disease, pharmaceuticals, and slower metabolism can lead to larger retention times and more opportunity for chemicals to exert their negative effects. So as you're getting older, reading that label, following the PPEs becomes more and more important. So what are the precautions, right? What can you do? So you have, okay, you minimize your exposure. How do you minimize your exposure? You can try considering integrated pest management systems. Definitely wear your appropriate PPEs, which means you have to read that label. If possible, choose a product with lowest toxicity. That's not always possible. The PPE is very possible. And when you're considering IPM, right, you do prevention, sanitation, exclusion. This you all know. And again, I like to put a plug in because I always say that read, and read again. Read those labels. The labels have everything in it that you need to know. So please read them. So that is a very quick blurb on aging. Now we're going to move on to communication. So in this part, with the communication part, you probably all know this already, because if you're interacting with the public, you know what works and what doesn't work. So this is just more of a reminder of what you could do if you're struggling with something. This could be, hey, I already do that. That is great. Or, hey, that's ridiculous. I would never do that. That's fine too. So let's move on to a little bit here. So when you're discussing risk with the public, right, it's basically, it needs to be an open conversation. And this is talking about me, like I'm a regulator, right? When I get something comes across my desk, I can form an opinion, but that doesn't mean it's the truth. I need to hear both sides. I need to discuss this. I need to see the whole, I need to see all of it. So you have the public and you have yourself, right? So it's an interactive conversation. So you as an applicator, yeah, you want to convey critical information. The public may also want to say, hey, there's a school right here. You can't spray. That's critical information for that person. You're like, yes, but the wind's blowing away from the school. The drift will not happen. It will be fine. So there's conversation, two pieces of information that would help each other, right? Need to correct misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation about pesticides out there. You need to correct that. No, I shouldn't say need. It'd be good if you did. It's important to build trust and rapport, because if you say something like, oh yeah, he told me the truth last time, he was good, I would trust him, he's great, or she's great, right? Build trust, build rapport. You should capture relevant information. Like, just talk about what needs to be talked about, and talking as a regulator, archive, organize, retrieve, report, keep track of things. Someone comes up to me and says, hey, Andrea, someone sprayed and it drifted onto my property. I know who it was. I'm like, okay, so I go and I talk to that person. So, okay, they use spray drifted, or the questioners or the complaint is you spray drift. You say, well, no, I look according to my records. This is what the weather was like that day. The wind blowing away from the property. Versus, hey, it's been 6 months. I'm pretty sure that day, because I didn't have proper record. I think it was the wind blowing away. I'm quite sure I followed what I was supposed to do. So you have information versus in your mind or versus on paper. So archive, keep track of things. That's very important. So when you're talking to the public, or we call them public stakeholders, doesn't really matter. You need to look at their perception of risks versus your perception of risks, right? The benefits, the trade-offs, the control options. You basically need to listen to what the person's saying and ask good questions. Okay, so the risk is low. but tell me, what is your specific concern? Because you can see there's a mom with a child, right? So listen, ask good questions, right? Be ready with your answers, discuss risk levels and how it affects things. It just talk. And I'm pretty sure all of you, like, you're been in your job probably for many years and you all know how to deal with this. But this is just again a reminder. So risks cannot be managed without communication because, as research shows, communication is the most powerful influence on people's risk decisions makings and their behavior. Look at social media. Is it all true? Definitely not. But as a person reads it, they read over and over again, becomes their truth. Whether it's true or not, they're not maybe doing their research. So communication is recognized as essential to enabling people and organizations, including myself, the government, to manage risks effectively. Right? So strategic risk communication can be defined as a purposeful process of skillful interactions with stakeholders supported by appropriate information. So basically it says talk. You have the information, you know what you're doing, you're a professional, let them see that. So, and that's all I'm going to say there, because that just the rest is all just blather, blather, blather. But just do what you do well, right? And you look at and risk communications, content may be included, like how do you get the information out there, right? So it could be you could be talking like verbal statements. You can talk to someone, right? You can have pictures, advertisements, publications, legal briefs, labels, warning signs, or anything else. So this is how you communicate. It doesn't have to be just personally, like maybe you're spraying the ditches and you're saying, hey, I can give the county a heads up. Maybe they'll post that this place is being sprayed. Or if the county's going to go spray, they might put a post, hey, I'm spraying past your farm, heading past this area. These are the days I'm doing it. Please be aware, this is what's going on. So how you communicate what you're doing and the risk involved with it is totally up to you, but there's some ways you can do it. So when you're looking at the content of the risk that you are trying to mitigate, right? You gotta describe, like, in this this is also hard for me to talk about because I can talk about regulations. I do that a lot. Communications, do the best I can, as soon as we all do too. But it's when you talk to someone and they have a concern, it's not easy to talk to them, because if they have a concern and they're talking factually with you and it's an easy conversation, that's great. It's when the conversation gets derailed and they get angry and they become and they start to blame, they're pointing fingers and it's your fault. That's when it gets harder. That's when you step back and take the approach. Okay, what is the risk that's going on here? What are the hazards, right? What have I got that I can reduce those hazards? Like, hey, yes, I did spray this field right here, but the wind's going one way. Maybe I've got some technology, like some equipment technology that decreases the amount of drift, and that all works, right? So explain what you're doing, help calm them down. So effective risk communications should reflect the best available knowledge that you have. And this knowledge should be selected for its relevance to decisions facing stakeholders, and it has to be put in terms that addresses their beliefs and their feelings and to a level that they can understand. So if I come in talking about, I use government jargon with all our, acronyms and stuff like that, people say, well, that's just government blah, 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 and that makes no sense to me. So I need to make sure I can talk in a level that the people I'm talking to understand what I'm trying to say. So what you're trying to do is not trying to get, like, you're trying not to create needless controversies. You don't want to raise your cost unnecessarily, and you don't want to make the risk management process more complicated, right? And you don't want to take away the trust. So when you go out there, you want people to say, yes, he's professional, she's professional, they're doing a great job. I've never had a problem. If I do, I can talk to them, they're easy to approach. They'll explain everything I need to know. This is the kind of communication that you want to have. And everyone knows that not everyone's easy to deal with outside. So when you look at, my slide's not going forward. We talk about the challenges of risk communication. Here, my slide's not moving. There's 2 seconds here. Okay. So challenges that we have when we talk about risk, because risk can be hard to communicate, because what you consider risk, what someone else considers risk, may not be the same. And when a person hears something that scares them or that they disagree with, right, it basically activates their emotional center of the brain. And so if someone gets scared about something, their first reaction might be anger. Like, think, for example, you watch a scary movie and now it's 12 o'clock at night and the whole house is dark. And you know what's in the house, you've been there for years, but walking down that hall in the dark, you don't turn lights on, you start hearing things, right? Your reaction is not exactly logical, it's illogical, because you know what's in the house, you know what's there, but in your mind you've had a scary movie. So your mind does weird things to people, right? So that's the part of the challenge of communicating risks to people. It's what's in their mind. Like, can you help change their mind? Can you help eliminate the fear that they've got in their brain? Because they have their emotional brain going on, because pesticides do elicit emotional brains, right? They can say that you're wrong. I don't believe what thing you're saying. You're just saying it because you use pesticides. There'd be a lot of things that they're saying. So how do you tell them so that they don't get angry? They don't not believe you, right? So trying to diffuse this emotional brain is what we're trying to deal with. And it's very difficult to do, because when someone is angry, there's not a lot you can do, because by the time they calm down, that could take a long time. And that's why, with this emotional brain, that's why difficult conversations often go south. It's because you can't reach what their mind's not reachable, basically. So why do pesticides elicit this type of response, right? Because for most people, and I know that through complaints and stuff, pesticides they're scared of them. They're dangerous. They're spooky. They kill things, right? One giant class of toxic compounds are all bad for you. They don't understand there's a different types of pesticides out there. But no, there's one giant class of toxic compounds, right? Big corporate, big ag, spooky stuff. They don't care about the people. They just want to make money, 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 money. People are scared of that. They don't like that. They don't trust that. They don't know it. It's mysterious. Pesticides out there, I can't see it. I can sometimes smell it. It does weird things. It might do weird things to me. Oh, my neighbor uses it. Either that's good or it's bad. But hey, I've heard about that. My neighbor uses it. And sometimes they're incorrectly or without due caution and care. So sometimes they are used incorrectly. And I would have to guess that often it's used incorrectly by those that don't know what they're doing, which could be their neighbor, if you're in a residential area. So how do you respond to all of this, right? So this is what I do, and this may not work for everyone else, but allow it to happen. Do not interrupt. I don't know about you, but I know people that you cannot interrupt them. If you interrupt them, they just talk louder. Or they might stop, and as soon as you stop talking, they keep going back to where they were. You cannot interrupt them. So do not interrupt. It's almost like opening a floodgate. Let it come out. Let it all come out. Sometimes the floodgate opens, it's all out. People can talk, they can kind of calm down. Try to understand, like, listen to what they're saying. What are they trying to say? Acknowledge to them that you understand. I know what you're saying. I understand that pesticides are scary, but, right? And if it's possible or appropriate, do respond. Like, it's hard just to take. You have to respond at some point. Because for everyone, perception may not be reality, but it is how people will, right? They base their opinions and decisions based on, I read on social media, I saw on Facebook, I saw this on Twitter. It's got to be true, right? They base their opinions and decisions. They take or may take or may not take action. They might approach you, they may not approach you. They may say, okay, I agree with what you're doing. This is great because now I get more food and it costs me less. This is awesome. Or they may not, right? They may recall how it all happened. Like they might remember, yeah, I got spray drifted, or they might not
Oh,
remember like,
Andrew? I think we
yes.
lost you for a quick second.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So where did you lose me at?
I lost you right after recall how events transpired came in.
Okay, so here I was saying when I'm out there doing inspections or I have a complaint comes in, there'd be one incident that happened. You talk to 5 different people and you get 5 different stories. The wind is blowing west, it was blowing south, it was blowing north. It's like, right? It was 6 in the morning, no, it was 6 at night. People, how they recall events is not always what actually happened. So again, I mentioned this earlier, right? Communication tools. How do you communicate with people? Actively listen to concerns. Now, the problem with actively listen, people can listen, but are they listening and as they're trying to think of a response, or are they actually stopping to listen to hear what they're saying? Because most people listen and then as they're listening, they think about how they can respond to what they're saying. So someone argues with me, I'm like, okay, hang on. And I'm thinking about what I can say back, and I'm missing half. I'm not really paying attention to what they're saying. So actively listen is an art, and most of us don't have it. Like I'm trying, it's very difficult. Do not interrupt. Sometimes that's hard because like, whew, that's been an hour. At some point I got to go home, right? Sometimes it could take longer than you want. Acknowledge their feelings. I understand what you're saying. I know this is scary for you, right? Understood. So they feel, okay, this person understands me. This person gets me. What's their, like, when you actually listen, what is their core concern? What are you concerned about? Like, do you eat food? Is all your food, is organic only? Do you go to the grocery store buy regular food? You know, all food is like agriculture is agriculture, right? What's your real concern? And if they have misinformation, try and correct that. Not their emotional part, but the actual facts that they have there. Well, pesticides are bad. Okay. The fact is, pesticides are bad or could be bad, but not all. And they have a reason for being. They're like in a toolbox of how we create food. Right. So correct them. But you know, if you try and correct someone, sometimes they go south real quick. They don't want to be corrected because they have an opinion and that's the only opinion. You just have to know who you're talking to. If you don't know something, well, I didn't know that, but I sure will look into it now that I know it. Now that you've told me that, maybe I'll look into that. And often you can offer third-party information and resources. Hey, you got a problem, talk to Andrea. She'll know what to do. No, talk to the government. Give them someone else to talk to. Because they may not trust you, but they might trust someone else. And they may not trust the government either. They might have to go to their local dealer down the road. It doesn't matter. Someone else that they could have that has resources that they could use. So then what do you avoid? Okay, this is where it gets hard for people if you're in an industry. Don't use undefined technical terms. Do not use a lot of acronyms. Because if you work in an industry and you're the same, you talk to the same people, you start using acronyms, right? But not everyone understands acronyms. Try not to repeat negative allegation that you yourself hear from the public or from the media. Just try and keep that at minimum. You can tell stories. Stories are good. People like stories. Stories relax people, and they can relate to stories. So tell appropriate stories, right? Give them examples, give them something that they can build on. This is also hard because you try like you want to be nice. Okay, well, give them realistic. Like, I'll get this done next week. No, I'll try and get back to you by tomorrow. When you know you're going to be busy all week, you just want them to be happy. No, I'll do the best I can. I know you have a concern. I'll look into it. I'll get back to you, say, as soon as I can, and hopefully within a week, right? It gives them a time frame, but you're not set on a certain date. And by not involving the public as a real, like they're real partners, they're out there. They're humans as if we are. So when they're out there, we're creating like I'm assuming you're all in agriculture, so you're all creating something that they need. So they're your partner because you're creating something, they're buying something, right? So basically, if you look at the big scope of things, we're all partners. Try and be transparent. That's the government's thing, is we're trying to be open and transparent. People say, you're not doing a very good job, but we're trying. Open and transparent as much as possible. You don't want to tell them any trade secrets, but like, oh yeah, it was windy. But the label says I can go up to 16 kilometers an hour. I clocked at 10 and it's blowing away from your house, right? Be open and transparent. I sprayed this chemical at this time because often I'll get a complaint that says they sprayed, I don't know what it was. My plants are dying. I breathed it in. Am I dying? Right? Oh, okay. What they wouldn't tell me what they sprayed. So now they're very worried, they're concerned. They've gone up a notch. Now they're complaining to me. Had that person said, hey, I used glyphosate. The wind is going away from your property, should not affect your trees. Nothing you breathe in came from me. Oh, okay. Like, tell them what you're doing. Then they don't have to call me. And that would be awesome. So communication, if you think about it, communication is your reputation, right? And I'm almost done, just in case you're worrying. It is your attitude. It's the actions you do or your inactions, your silences, and your timeliness. So I'll go through this really fast because I see it's 12 o'clock on the nose. And bloop, bloop. As I'm quickly scrolling, you can quickly read, right? So basically what we're saying is to be an effective to have effective communication, know what you're doing, know your audience, present information that they can understand. And address expectations, right? Explain your role, this is what I do, what your limitations are, etc., etc. Basically, talk is what I'm trying to say here. Now, I had more on this, but I'll just leave this be. Social trust plays a crucial role in anyone that uses pesticides, right? Especially when it comes to relationships between the public and the applicator. I'm calling you guys the applicator. And social trust is maintained by being professional, right? And provides, like I said, the points 1 to 6. So the more professional you are, the more likely you'll be believable, the more likely you will calm people's fears, the more likely that we'll have maybe the pesticides will be coming out of that. They're not as bad as people. They are bad, but they have a purpose, right? The most information I got from this presentation here's where I got it from. And mostly see Health Canada, mostly there. That's where I have to get it from. And if you ever want to contact any of us in Alberta, this is us. We have a website. Please go to it. On the website, we have a label app, so you can check all labels. All pesticide labels are there. If you have a question that you don't want to talk to me about or anyone from Alberta, you can call the 1-800 number. It's toll-free from Canada. And if you want to send a generic request, then you can go to the Prairie PCP, or you can contact any one of us. There's 3 of us in Calgary and 2 in Edmonton that you can contact. And at any point, you can text us. These are our text numbers, our mobile numbers. Text us, email us, and we will respond as quick as we can. And that is all I've got. Whew! 12:03, that wasn't bad at all.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea.